So I did my deep dive on two different collaborative writing platforms, Frankenstories and Frantic Fanfic. Both of these platforms allow students or anyone else, they're not just for schools, to write in a group under time pressure. So in both of these scenarios, students are given a prompt and they have to write a response to that prompt within a certain number of characters, within a certain amount of time, and then you vote on those prompts as class. So, starting with Frankenstories, this is what a story would look like there. So there are different rounds, and each round, students are given something to write about. So here they're writing about McDonald's, and they had a character limit of 200 characters. Now the player who has the most votes, because after each round, everyone gets to vote on their favorite response, that response is the one that's going to be added to the final story. Now this has 28 players, so 28 responses and 28 possible votes for a total of 6 rounds. So including the title round, they get to choose their favorite responses from each one, which leads to a final story, which a lot of the times these are really fun and exuberant because they are what the students enjoyed. Not what we as teachers think was the best writing, but what the students thought were really cool. So you can see here that you can see on the leaderboard how many votes you got for your responses and how many likes you got. So you might have gotten a lot of votes, but not a lot of likes, or vice versa. So it's a really, really cool tool to utilize because it redefines what it means for students to be writing collaboratively. So talking about the SAMR model, when it comes to redefinition, doing an assignment like this wouldn't have been possible without a program like Frankenstories. You can have students all writing at the same time, but for the students to be able to all be able to vote and see each other's responses in real time, to be writing under a time pressure, and in other cases, students would have had to take multiple days of reading each other's responses, grading them, analyzing them, and trying to remember what was the one that I just read. In these cases, students are able to allow their creative freedom to flow, but also responsibly and easily vote for the best response for that round. So when you're making these games, it's really easy to change them to exactly what you want. You can change the rules, you can change the prompt. There are so many different prompts that you can use. There are different settings that you can use. You can show the leaderboard. You can disable swearing for your students, add limits, waiving, and there are different ways that you can change the number of rounds, the character limit, the writing timer, the voting timer. There's a lot of freedom with this platform, and it's a platform that is accessible to students as well. They can do this on their own too. So without having to pay anything, they call these teacher panel subscriptions, but anyone can use them. Without having to pay anything, you can use custom prompts and images. So if I didn't want my students to be writing from a set prompts that they had about, just general literature or zombies or something like that, which are a lot of the ones that come up as like zombies and sci-fi stuff. If I wanted my students to be writing from the perspective of Othello, I could put that in as a prompt, and I could change all of my prompts based on what my students need to be learning and what I want them to be creating. So the great part about this program and about the other program, Frantic Fanfic, is that in both cases, students are the ones who are creating. So they're going back and they're taking their understanding of what you're doing and taking that and creating their own works. And you can really see how much they understood from what you had before. Some other perks of some of the paid teacher plans are being able to change the names of your students to make sure that there aren't any inappropriate names or anything like that. You can break it up for students to be in different groups. So you can either group by period if you want to, or you can do groups within the periods, creating the games, starting and ending the games whenever you want, and you can accept and reject replies. So if someone had made a reply that wasn't appropriate, you can reject that as the teacher before your students see it. And then you can export the reports. Now this is really cool because this allows you to export the report. You can share it with your students if you want to. You can keep it for yourself. But by sharing it with your students, they are then able to look at it and say, okay, why did I maybe not get as many votes or as many likes? What can I do better? Was I lacking in my understanding of the prompt? Was something else lacking in my response? So this is a really great way for reflection for your students. Something else about this that's really amazing is the Hall of Fame. So this allows students to evaluate other people's responses. So many other students have already done these with their teachers or with their friends, and you can upload them to the Hall of Fame. You can apply to put it in the Hall of Fame, and students can see what stories are other people producing and what makes it a good story. Something else that's really cool about this is the modification and the augmentation of its own platform. So if you maybe don't want to be reading through all of these, right, they have a playable option where some of the best of their stories, they've actually turned into YouTube videos of people reading them out in character. So that's a really great way that they've modified their own technology from just being a writing-based platform to also being a visual platform. Frantic Fanfic is really interesting because it kind of substitutes a more traditional collaborative writing assignment that students would have to do. So a lot of the times what we'll ask students to do is pass around a pen and paper and write from what the last person has written without being able to read it, and it's all timed. And again, we'll give them prompts and stuff like that, and it's really just to kind of get them involved. So this allows students to pick their own characters that they can talk about. That's why it's called fanfic, because it's fan fiction. So you could assign your students that they have to write about Othello and Hamlet and whatever characters you want to come up with. You could give them a bank perhaps, and they pick, and they can really go on with their creative freedom in this in a way that is really hard to do in a normal classroom environment with paper and pen. There's really no way to do this without these new technologies. So what's really cool about this, you get to make your own character, put your name in. There are a lot of different character designs, and as the teacher, unlike with Frankenstories, where you can change their names yourselves, you can still go on and watch them do this and make sure that they're not clicking the I am 18 plus or anything like that. So then you can create your game, and this is what it looks like. There's so many ways that you can do this. As the teacher, we can create them and then give our students the rooms and then change the timings based on what we need for that assignment. You could also have students make their own rooms and create their own codes to make with small groups. It's a really fun way for your students to start creative writing under a time pressure without feeling strained by that pressure. So once you have those stories, you can see what characters were involved in it. So this one had Dom Toretto and Barry Allen, and it had 3 different writers. So this was one of the writers. You can see a little bit of the other persons on the top, and once everyone's read it, they can react, and you can give like a little clapping emoji or a fire emoji or a heart. It's a really great way to get your students involved in each other's work. And then at the end, you can see the leaderboard. So what stories were the best? Which ones won the awards? It's really fun to see how your story did and if your peers enjoyed it. So these are really great ways of allowing our students to create in the classroom, but also evaluate what they've created. So they can go back and see, okay, well, maybe why didn't I win? You know, why did someone, not give this person a fire emoji rather than giving me a fire emoji? So these are really interesting tools that really haven't been, which are really allowing us in the classroom to do things that we haven't been able to do before. When it comes to substitution, students can always just write on their tablets or on their laptops. But this really takes it up a notch with redefining what it means to write collaboratively. And for a student, that can be a fun experience and a memorable experience, but it can also help improve their writing and improve their time pressure. So these tools are both really interesting. Frankenstories is perhaps a little bit more refined than Frantic Fanfic. Frantic Fanfic's still in development, but I definitely can see either of these having a place in a classroom.